Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley.
Here.
Harding is absent. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. President.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and opening remarks by myself. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Maybe just two thoughts before we get started today. One is that I think we're here to discuss some important local issues about the city budget and things we care about, things like workforce and mental health and bike lanes. But I asked us to keep in mind also what we're seeing on the international scope right now for those in crisis and those in need, whether that be Afghanistan or whether that be Haiti or whether that be wildfires in California or tropical storms in Florida. There's a lot of need out there, and I ask us to keep all those folks in our thoughts and prayers. And then secondly, I think we have some members of the AFL-CIO in attendance today. I just want to wish them an early happy Labor Day. We're still a couple weeks out, but since you're here today, I wanted to recognize all that the working people do for our community and all that you do with September Fest coming up for the community and the strong workforce needs we all know we need throughout the community with our employers. So thanks for what you do.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
So welcome to the Omaha City Council. We're pleased to have you here. We look forward to hearing your testimony on many items yet today. I ask you to turn your cell phones off or at least turn them to vibrate. Madam Clerk.
Item 6, a resolution to approve a revision to the 2022 recommended budget to increase the general fund community service programs by $90,000 for Community Alliance's Family Education Services.
So we'll have a number of proposed amendments to the city budget next with commentary on each. I'll ask the proponents of each item if they want a chance to give a short summary of what that amendment will do. And of course, council members can turn the lights on and ask any questions they may have before voting on each of them. Number 6 is an item I introduced, so I'll give a short introduction here. This item would address mental health issues throughout the community. 7 in 10 families in our state experience mental health challenges. We all know this is a huge issue. We hear about it from our police department, from school superintendents, from providers. We've heard it from the public year after year during our budget hearings. Last year, I attempted to amend the budget by $2 million for mental health purposes, but it was vetoed. So I'm getting more specific this year and hope we can have some support for this program, which is a proven existing program done by Community Alliance that helps families and individuals address resources they may need, helps them pursue strategies for de-escalation of crisis before police calls are necessary, and hopefully avoiding police calls. So in that sense, it would work well with our behavioral health unit within the police department, but hopefully address those situations before it would ever escalate to that point. The $90,000 suggested would go to Community Alliance and help a couple hundred more families with an existing program they have. I know Community Alliance is here. I may ask them to come down just for a moment if you'd like to speak and just give it maybe a short summary of the program and what this would do. And then your name and address for the record too.
Well, first of all, my name is Aileen Brady. I'm with Community Alliance. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and that's 4001 Leavenworth. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you, Councilman Festerson, for introducing this and adding this in. This is a vitally important program because it does empower families to learn about their loved one's illness and be able to, in that moment, in that time, to help their family member with whatever's going on in terms of their mental health at the present time. And what this program does in partnership with NAMI Nebraska is to teach families much more about not only how to support and take care of their loved one with their illness, but also how to take care of themselves, because as we know, we must take care of ourselves so we can be able to be there for others. And what we put an emphasis on within this program, and it's an evidence-based curriculum that's been developed by NAMI National, is that it allows families to learn about the symptoms and learn about what those early signs might be for a relapse or decompensation, and they can intervene a bit earlier and can avoid that crisis that we were just referring to. We want to avoid police involvement. We want to avoid crisis involvement. We want to be able to get them interventions with mental health support and treatment much earlier in the process. We know that relapse can happen, and so this program teaches families the skills and the strategies and the coping to help their family member deal with the illness. And I know I need to keep it brief. I just wanted to add a little extra information. I'm happy to answer questions if that would be helpful, but it is vitally important. And the day that this was introduced, I just want to add this. The day that this was introduced, I talked to the executive director of NAMI, and she said, this is so timely. She's got 11 calls today just from families who needed help. 11 calls in a day. So we know this is vitally important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No doubt there's a need. And this is a modest addition through the city of Omaha. I am hopeful that the city and county can do a lot more in the area of mental health through the ARPA fund process that we are going through right now as well. But this is a start, and I think this is something that we all need to partner on and all need to own in terms of a solution. So with that, I don't see any other lights on, but I would take a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 7, a resolution to approve a revision to the 2022 recommended budget to increase the general fund community service programs by $15,000 for Keep Omaha Beautiful.
Thank you. I introduced this item as well. A couple years ago, we did make an amendment to the city budget that added $35,000 to Keep Omaha Beautiful, who's here today. At the time, I did that because we saw the impacts of the emerald ash borer starting to happen throughout our community. 11,000 trees that are dying on public property. So in an effort to help restore our canopy, we contributed $35,000, which was then matched by private money through Keep Omaha Beautiful to address that issue. And I've seen a noticeable increase of new trees planted, I know in my area, but also throughout the entire city that I think has been very valuable and for future generations. So since then, we have also, though, moved more to a strategy of removing all emerald ash borer trees as opposed to treating some over time. And then, of course, we had the huge July storm that just happened and impacted our parks severely. So I thought it was a good time to try and ramp this up again. It's $15,000, which might do between 50 and 75 trees. But more importantly, it signifies our intention to do that and signifies to the private sector that we want their help again, too, to help pursue this same improvement. Mr. Stratman, I see you're here if you'd like to add anything about your program.
Hello, City Council. My name is Chris Stratman. I'm the Executive Director of Keep Omaha Beautiful, and the address is 2327 North 50th Avenue. First of all, thank you for suggesting the amendment. We started the Trees for Omaha program in partnership with Parks and Rec, who have been a wonderful partner. We started that in spring of 2018, and so over a 3-year period now, we've planted over 2,500 trees in 65 different parks and along 4 trails throughout the city of Omaha. What's wonderful about that is we've been able to leverage funding from private entities as well. So we spend almost now about $525,000 on the program, $55,000 of which has been city funding. So roughly about 10% of that. This is very much focused on replacement and addressing obviously the emerald ash borer and the loss of our communities and public ash trees, specifically in our parks and along our trails. But of course, and after talking to Mr. Kelsevich, following the July 10th storm, we're going to also be focusing on areas that are parks that have lost trees due to the storm damage as well. But yeah, so I entertain any questions or any obviously inquiries related to that.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for your efforts in that area.
Yeah.
No further lights. Is there a motion?
Second.
Roll call.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 8, a resolution to approve a revision to the 2022 recommended budget to increase the general fund community service programs by $40,000 for a small business facilitator consultant.
Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and make the recommendation to amend that to a revision for the 2022 recommendation to be issued to the REACH program. This item that I brought forth today is to ensure that District 2 has the opportunity to have hand-on treatment, hand-on assistance with reaching the opportunities that are so much in need of our community to move to the next level as it relates to economic growth. District 2 has been in the hole as far as having opportunities for whatever reasons, but definitely since COVID-19 has brought to our attention the impact, has brought to our attention the impact of people of color and underserved communities, and as far as what they are able to do in terms of leveraging their skills, their services, and their abilities to really make a huge impact on providing money for their families. This is something that we have struggled with in District 2 for a very long time. Now we have the American Recovery Act as another tool. I just want to make sure that we have the necessary tools to move forward, move the next needle so that we are very impactful and making sure that all the skilled workers there can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And so what's on the floor is an amendment of the whole for $40,000 to the REACH program.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to say that the REACH program was started, Councilmember Festerson, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was about 6 years ago, 6 to 7 years ago. I know it was in my first term. We were looking for ways to help small and emerging businesses. We had our SEB program. Our Human Rights and Relations Department does an excellent job in helping with that, but we needed additional tools. We needed a one-stop shop in order to help small businesses if they just want to start, or if you have small businesses that are struggling, need to know how to do payroll, use QuickBooks, get funding, how to get bonds. And I actually think, I don't know if Winsley's here, Winsley Duran from the REACH program, but done a great job in partnership with the Omaha Chamber. And currently, the city, we have $150,000. So it's not that we don't fund it. We are currently funding REACH at $150,000 at this time. I don't believe they asked for any more. So I want to say that I firmly support the REACH program. I've been down to the chamber. I've seen how it worked. I've met with business owners who've used it, and it's an absolutely fabulous program. However, we also have an immediate need today for tenant assistance. Right now, there's $250,000 in amendments on our agenda. We can only pass $200,000 in order to stay within the charter and balance our budget. Unlike the federal government, we don't get to work in a deficit here in Omaha. We actually balance our budget, and so we pay for all of our expenses every year. We don't go into a deficit. If we were to do so, we would actually have to then raise your taxes. We would be off on revenues, and that is not what I'm proposing to do. However, because REACH is funded at $150,000, I would like for this $40,000 to be reserved for my amendment to help the tenant assistance program. Ms. Johnson just stated that there are many underserved people in District 2 who need to provide for their families and need necessary tools. Well, I can tell you from my experience as a volunteer lawyer who's actually helping on this project myself. In fact, I donated 3 mornings of my time just last week. I'll be there again tomorrow. What we are trying to do is help tenants who can't pay their rent. And to me, right now, that is a more important need than giving additional money when we already have a program that's funded, and it's funded in addition by private sector, our wonderful business community, the Omaha Chamber, and it is working, and it is open for business for anyone who wants to start a business or needs help with their business. They can go down to REACH. But right now, we have funds that we did receive from the federal government, but I can tell you in my experience last week, there were tenants and landlords, neither of which knew that these funds were available. None knew how to apply for them, and no one knew about them until they're actually in court on an eviction. everybody thinks that there's a moratorium, therefore the cases aren't being filed and they aren't being held, and that is not true. The moratorium was actually lifted, and there were hundreds of cases filed. I will talk about the need for that when mine comes up, but I want to let everyone know by voting for this, basically you are eliminating the ability for us to have a full-time person in charge of this program that currently we're just kind of doing on a whim with volunteer lawyers who are showing up at 9 o'clock, but we don't have the cases necessarily prepared. We don't have all the information. And, you know, as a lawyer, I don't mind going in and kind of practicing on the skin of my teeth, but I can tell you if there's any lawyers in here, it's very difficult to walk into court and help argue a case when you don't even have the case file, you haven't read the complaint, and you don't know the facts. I'm looking at a lawyer in the back who I know would never walk into court that way. But that's what we're doing as volunteer lawyers, because we really need a full-time position for somebody that's going to work up those cases, hopefully contact the landlords and the tenants before they get to court at 9 a.m. so that we can work that out. Last Wednesday, we had 28 cases that we were handling just on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. We've got the funds for this. In fact, we got 22 million, and we can apply, and hopefully I think are getting another 19 million. But right now, this is also a win-win. Not only are we keeping people from becoming homeless, but we're also getting the landlords paid. The landlords have really suffered over this last year and a half because they have to keep paying their mortgage when they're not receiving the rents. And so to me, and I've done these cases, I've actually taken the time, and there were landlords that got paid within 3 days last week. Not only did they get paid the 3 months that they were owed, they were paid in advance all the way until the end of October. So I had landlords walking out happy, and they walked out with their tenants. They didn't want to evict them, but they needed the money. So this is something that I think we really need to do. There are people that are falling through the cracks. There was one case in front of the court that somehow got missed. They didn't even get a volunteer lawyer. I just happened to be sitting in the courtroom, and I was able to interrupt and get the tenant some help and get them matched up with Match to get some funds. And had I not actually just been sitting there, that wouldn't have happened, and we would have had another person who, quite frankly, could have become homeless, because there are a number of cases that can still be filed for evictions that don't fall under the 7-day. And I know I may be talking over, but everybody thinks there's just a moratorium on any landlord's filing, and that's not true at all. So in addition, we're also helping mediate some of the other cases that aren't covered under this moratorium. We're helping mediate, maybe giving them some additional time, working on still getting the landlords paid, even if they want to get the tenants out, because sometimes you can get your tenant out, but you're never going to get that 3 months back. So we're actually benefiting both parties in these lawsuits, but we really are in desperate need of having one person actually in charge of this tenant assistance program, so that it's not just a bunch of us volunteers showing up at 9 o'clock, but we don't have anything prepared. Again, 28 cases with 3 lawyers showing up, that can be very difficult to do. And a lot of the volunteer lawyers, God bless them, but they don't practice landlord-tenant either. So now you have lawyers showing up who are great volunteers, but now they're having to learn a whole new area of law. So what we really need is one position filled. Hopefully we'll only need this position for 1 year, but it's vitally important to not just the people in District 2 who actually are disproportionately being affected by convictions, but I can tell you, I got some stats today that said actually my district is number 3 in the city on number of evictions. So this isn't just impacting one district, it's impacting our entire city. But I would say it's disproportionately impacting probably districts 1 through 4 more than it is 5 through 7 on the number of people that I see every day when I'm down there helping at 9 a.m. in the courtroom that's actually just below our chambers. So you can see the people at work, you can see the work that's going on, you can see what we do every day except Thursday at 9 o'clock in the courtroom below us. So that's why we just started the program 2 weeks ago. I did it all last week, so I apologize for my late amendment. It was just something that I discovered we absolutely needed in order to get people the help that they need. So that's why I am asking for the $50,000. I'm asking if REACH could wait 1 more year and we can maybe up their funding from $150,000 to $200,000 next year in next year's budget. I'd be completely supportive of that. but this is something we need right now that we don't have. So that would be, I'm not voting against no to give REACH additional funding, but they are receiving $150,000, fully support it. But I would rather this money go to help tenants who need this assistance. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Ms. Melton. I really appreciate all the effort that you're doing to help regarding the funding for possible eviction. However, the REACH program will provide funding and household benefits for those that will be taking care of their family from a long-term perspective. The eviction is something that's going to be temporary. We expect to get out of the COVID era very quickly here. And so what I'm proposing is something that will take care of family households in terms of the head of household to provide money, livable income, high wage income for people that live in the area where there are people of color, underserved communities, which is why we're here today with a number of people that have been impacted by COVID. I'm not the only person that believes that we need to help these individuals. We have a current administration that's also giving us a lot of money to deal with this problem. So I would, at this time, vote that we do give the additional funding to the REACH program because the amount that has been set aside is nearly not enough. And then there are also additional funds in the budget that will allow for your recommendation to assist with the removal of persons from their household if they were to get evicted at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
And I just want to say, it's wonderful, but if you're homeless, you can't start your own business. So you won't be able to use the REACH resources if you're homeless. I think we need to deal with the immediate need of people losing their housing. And they can still go to REACH, whether they have this extra 40 or not. REACH is functioning, and REACH does not give money out. REACH helps people start businesses and gives them the tools and where they can go to get funding, where they can go to bond, where they can go. They don't go to REACH for money. They go to REACH for help in securing funds, and REACH can do that. They're doing it right now. They're doing it today. So without the 40,000, but if you're homeless, REACH isn't going to help you start your own business. We got to make sure that you at least have shelter over your head for you and your children, especially as school starts. I just don't want to see, and I think we'll have some people tell us, even this morning we heard, every time a child moves, they get behind 3 months. So at this point in time, I'm going to support the immediate need that our city has, and I do hope COVID will leave us soon. I'm hearing that it's probably going to be around a lot longer than we think. But again, there are people that are being filed on that will be homeless without their help, and they'll be homeless within the next 30 to 60 days. Thank you.
I might just add, we do not have a motion or a second yet.
I did move that we accept the recommendation for the 40,000 to be issued to REACH.
Okay.
Did-
This motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I had one question, but maybe before calling the vote, because I think we do have two worthy causes here, both of which I think we'd all like to do. And I think Ms. Melton brings up a very good point and a very good program that should be in all of our minds and something we should be trying to address. So I don't know if this is a question for Mr. Kuzy or maybe Mr. Dowding, but when this came up, I thought to myself about the same funding that Ms. Melton discussed. The $22 million already allocated from the city to match, and then the $19 million, which I think is secured and is on the way to the city before the end of the year for rental assistance for those in need and to help prevent the eviction situations that Ms. Melton's working on. And I thought to myself, could the program we're discussing here today also be funded from that money? Possibly a lot more than $50,000 that's presented here today for the extreme need that she's experiencing and working on. And I think that answer is yes, at least from those that I've talked to that are experienced with the program and have looked at how those funds can be used. To me, that would certainly seem appropriate if that doesn't otherwise get addressed today. So, Mr. Kuzi, maybe the question to you, if you know the answer off the top of your head, is if we thought that was a good idea, what process do we need to pursue for that to occur, seeing as we've essentially contracted those funds to match? Is that a request to match? Is that a resolution we passed? Is it some other form of action that we need to be taken?
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department. If I understand your question correctly, you want to know basically, can match funds be used for the project that Ms. Melton is describing?
Yes, and how would we go about that at this point if we wanted to do that right now with the match funds currently in play?
It is my understanding that that is possible to use match funds to accomplish that. It is also my understanding that that would have to be done basically within our agreement that we have with match. We'd either have to modify it or come up with a new one to allow for that. But it's my understanding that match funds can be used for that purpose.
It's most likely a small amendment to that agreement.
That would be my suggestion, yes.
Okay. Well, that'd certainly be something I would be willing to pursue if this does not otherwise get addressed today. Mr. Rowe.
I guess I just wanted to say that we have like 6 amendments, then we can only fund 5 or less. So we're going to have to make some tough choices today. And it's unfortunate. I asked at the pre-council meeting, how did we place these in what order? And it was probably just by the way they came in. So I think I'm gonna probably vote with Councilmember Melton, because I agree with the amendment that's going to be coming up next from Mr. Begley and Mr. Palermo, and that we just don't have enough money to fund everything. So I just want to put that out there that we've got a tough decision to make.
Thank you. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I wanted to add as well, I mean, unfortunately, we did receive this late, and Councilmember Melton, you're exactly right. This is much needed. So it's good to hear from the city attorney, acting city attorney, that it is possible for this important position that's helping through match, because we know $22 million is a lot more, and I'll just say it, than the crumbs we're fighting over right now. So maybe that's the discussion we should have, as finance will cringe a little bit. Maybe the contingency fund should be increased for us as we see needs that need to be addressed in the districts that we serve. A wise man once told me, and it was my grandpa always who fought for people, he said, it's really easy to fight the fight for what's right. He said, it's really hard to give away money once you have it. And I never understood that until being on the South Omaha Historical Grant Committee, where you get grants that come in and you're like, oh, this is easy, everybody's going to get it. And you add up the money you have to give away, or you add up the money that the grants come in, and it's $600,000, and you got $150 to give away. It's not easy to provide for everything that's very worthy with what you have in front of you. And it's unfortunate these amendments do come in the order that they are received. And when I seen yours, I said, man, that's a really good one. I wish it was in a different order, but it's not. So everything's important. I will vote yes all the way down until the money is out. Again, maybe the discussion should be a little more money in our contingency fund for the next go around next year. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Melton.
No, and I appreciate that. And actually, I did, on our agenda, this 40,000 was supposed to be for a new consultant, so I wasn't aware that it was going to reach until 30 minutes ago. I mean, so that was last minute too. I think it would. I was actually going to talk about REACH when I saw this. I thought, wow, that's exactly what REACH does. So had we known that this was actually going to reach, it probably would have changed the discussion a little bit too, because I was not at all in support of funding a new consultant position to duplicate at least 3 other people and entities were doing just that with HR&R, our SEB program. I even think some CDBG funds and our planning. I think Dave does some stuff with this, and also REACH. So we already had this, and it was very duplicative. So it wasn't, until right before this meeting that it was proposed to go to REACH. In fact, I haven't even seen anything written on it. So I assume, Mr. Kuzi, that the floor amendment, just saying REACH, we have something that will actually direct it to the correct place.
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department. A resolution was drafted by the Finance Department that involves that change and specifies that the money would be going to REACH. I believe the clerk possibly has the resolution.
Okay, because that must have just come up today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
And then I believe if that's approved, that also requires then a supplemental contract of some kind that would come back to the city council. And yeah, okay. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. And also, as we go through these, I want everybody who's listening and paying attention to how this works, where we have the 200,000 that we get to decide or hope to decide where it goes. Keep in mind that the votes we have here today, if it gets 4, it passes. Maybe if it gets 5, it's veto proof. But either way, there's another level of approval that happens. Even if one of these budget amendments gets 4 votes, it will go to the mayor, and then the mayor will decide whether it's part of the budget or not. But and some may think, well, that's fine. If something don't passes, then Councilmember Melton's amendment, we could shift this money over and transfer it. But as we heard from Law earlier, if Mr. Kuzi could answer, if one of these budget amendments that we're talking about now were to be not passed or vetoed by the mayor, would that money then become available for another budget amendment we have in front of us?
I do not, Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department, I do not believe that that would be the case. That the budget is the budget that gets passed by the council today. Any money, if something is vetoed or what have you, any money that is vetoed and that the veto is not overridden simply returns to either the general fund or the contingency fund. For that last part of the answer, I defer to the Finance Department as to what account it would go into.
Thank you. And I'm sure Steve Curtis would love to answer that question. So we do have the exact answer on what happens to the funds that if we approve it and it goes to the next step and gets vetoed, what would happen with those funds?
Steve Curtis, City Finance. Those funds will remain unallocated, and Matt Kuzi's correct. You wouldn't be able to amend the budget after today, but those would be unallocated and would be at the discretion of the mayor.
Okay, thank you both.
Thank you. No further lights. There's a motion and a second on the floor.
Looks like I got one
Mr.
on
Bigley.
mine.
Thanks, Mr. President. I appreciate my colleagues drilling down a little bit more on how that budget process worked. It explaining how if it was vetoed, then it doesn't get put back in. So that was a little education for me in pre-council this morning. It helps me understand this process better. And all the amendments that were made, Councilmember Melton's is an excellent amendment as well with the others. But as Councilman Rose said, it's difficult. You want to support all these programs, but there's only that much money that can be put into these. And if it's vetoed, we can't put it back in. So that's good clarification on this for me at least. Thanks.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Roll call.
Melton. No. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
No.
Bagley.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-2. Item 9, a resolution to approve a revision to the 2022 recommended budget to increase the general fund city council administrative costs by $15,000 for a website consultant.
Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
So this item has been put into the budget for purposes of being a pilot website that will allow communication to flow much more fluid, more fast, more quickly. District 2 is in very much need of being able to access information quickly as, again, we're trying to grow, we're trying to develop the economy there. We have poor infrastructure. We have a lot of things that we are suffering from as a community. Again, I would caution everyone here as leaders. We know statistically, COVID is a direct impact to people of color, underserved communities. It is all of our responsibility to understand the significance of systematic racism, which District 2 has been an area of, or a community that has been impacted by systematic racism. So this $15,000 budget item will give us opportunities to bridge the gap, to bridge opportunities to apply for jobs. It would do so much for us. As we know, we will get notifications about different programs, different venues will come. There will be notification that will come. We know that in Omaha, Nebraska, that information is flowed very slow. It's at a snail's pace. And this website will give me access to getting that information out on the web page where the community in District 2 can go to it and look at it and get the response immediately, which is oftentimes the case when something goes out for bid, something goes out for notification, something goes out for a project. These are all things that will make our community a little bit more effective, more robust. It will just do a number of things for us. So at this time, I would vote that we accept this item as amended. Thank you.
So you're moving that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're moving item 9, right?
I'm moving item 9.
Okay. Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
Well, I just, point of order, I'm not, what's the amendment?
There's no amendment, just moving number 9.
Moving number.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I heard as amended, and I didn't see an amendment.
No problem.
Okay. Well, and I guess, I wasn't sure what this 15,000 was actually for, because it states that it's 15,000 for non-personnel for a website consultant. So I didn't know, I thought maybe that this was to do a different website for the city council, because the city council actually has a website on the city page.
The city council currently has a website on the page, but it does not give us access to upload things at a quick, rapid pace. So we need something in our area, not only District 2, but really this is a pilot program so that we can look at how effective this pilot program is in terms of giving information to a area quickly so that they can respond to opportunities. I thought that we as leaders wanted to work on opportunities in disadvantaged areas. This gives us the vehicle to do that. This is just one of the many tools that we will provide as leaders as we're addressing inequities across not only Omaha, but the United States to deal with giving everyone equal playing fields, equal access. We have an inclusion department, we have a diversity department. This tool, again, just gives us a vehicle to get that information out there quickly. District 2 does not have a radio channel. It doesn't. Cox Communication does not provide us with any resources for us to get information out quickly. This is a tool that is very much needed in order for us to advance forward.
Okay.
Ms. Melton, you have the floor. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, and I understand, but I guess I'm a little uncomfortable, even legally, passing something that's going to provide a service for one district. So if Councilwoman Johnson has her own website that's funded by the taxpayers just for her district, that leaves South Omaha without one. And I guess we've seen that even with the Step Up program, where we've seen, hey, you're just covering one district and not the other district. And we really had to ramp that up so that South Omaha was covered as well under the step up. We hired somebody else. Like, we've kind of been down that road where we want to make sure that we're providing services equally amongst the city. And I even would have some concern if one council member has their own website that's paid for by the city but doesn't go through .com. To me, that just seems like that's a political website. Many of us have our own websites. It's political. You have to file that with the NADC, or you're running into you could be running into some other issues. I'm not going to ask our city attorney to go into NADC issues because that may not be his area of expertise, only because the city shouldn't have anything to do with anything political. So you can have a website, and in fact, there's 20-somethings that can do these for free. And in fact, there's a lot of people that have websites, I know, that are in your district. They also have Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts, because I know they're on there every day and getting information out pretty quickly, because I see it. But I guess at this point, I'm just, if you were going to do separate websites for the council districts, I think it almost would have to be for everyone. I'm not necessarily in support of that. A number of years ago, and Councilman Festerson, correct me if I'm wrong on this, we got rid of any kind of budget for travel. And I want to say that was about 6 years ago, approximately. The mayor was asking all of the departments to decrease their budgets by a certain percent. And so this council, we eliminated our travel budget for the individual council members. And I know all of us have traveled. I go to conferences twice a year to meet with other mayors and other council members. That's fully covered. None of it's covered by the city or taxpayer dollars. I know your predecessor traveled a lot, paid for it. I know Rich Paul's traveled quite a bit, and he went up, especially with the trash, when we were trying to determine the trash contract. He drove all the way up to Minnesota to check them out. So we all will pay for things like that, which actually that costs a lot more than just having a website. And there are actually free websites, which I'd be more than happy to let the person that did mine, give that to you, that you can post on. You can post on it every day. And I guess I'm just not sure what the $15,000 would pay for. And is there anyone in the city, because we don't have .com here, but if you have a city hosted website that doesn't go through .com, is there anybody from the city that understands or knows how that would work? Because I thought everything had to go through .com for security. Mr. Kuzy, I know it's not necessarily a legal issue, but I'm looking to you because you're the only one that may have a semblance of an answer.
Matt Kuzy, City of Omaha Law Department. I do not believe that there is any entity within the city that has its own website that is not operated by .com. You are correct, there are security issues for these matters, and that's why we have .com manage all of our software, our computers, all of our technology that we have in particular offices and departments. That's why we have .com manage, supervise, and administer those, somewhat similar to how we have the building commission manage and maintain the Civic Center.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kuzy. That's what I was thinking, that it would be. I'm not sure how this would operate. If it's operating outside .com, I think it would be the equivalent of using taxpayer dollars to pay for a political consultant who's going to be doing a website and posting on it. Most of us do have political websites. Many people still maybe continue to pay somebody to post on there or do it themselves. But to me, I would be concerned with the legality of having a political website that's paid for by taxpayer dollars, and then only providing it to one council member. So that would be why I wouldn't be supportive of that at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Mr. Kuzy, this .com, will it allow the city council person to upload information? Again, this is not a political campaign. website that is being proposed here. What's being proposed here is that we will have things like the affordable housing will come up where where there will be things that we'll need to address from city council perspective in District 2 as it relates to affordable housing and other things. This website that is being proposed is a vehicle to funnel information in District 2 from a city perspective so that we have opportunities at a better rate of effectiveness, whereby we're not able to utilize the current service that we have with DOT at this time.
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department, that question is better presented today or before today to .com.
So again, would there be, I put a motion on the floor.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. No further lights. Roll call.
Melton.
No.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
No.
Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-2. Item 10, a resolution to approve a revision to the 2022 recommended budget to increase the general fund community service programs by $40,000 for the Nebraska Center for Workforce Development and Education.
Mr. Palermo and Mr. Bagley, you're recognized.
You better go first today.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's with a great honor today that this $40,000 for the Nebraska Center for Workforce Development and Education. It's a nonprofit that's been around going on about 3 years now. Does a lot of great things. We'll have some speakers that'll be able to drill down a little more on what those things are. But basically, it's helping. One part is helping high-risk individuals that are incarcerated, that they get mentored with some people that will guide them so they're not going back to jail, costing taxpayers money to incarcerate, recidivism. It's a partnership that helps men and women get put on tax rolls, productive members of society, where they can help their families and prosper in our community. The other part of it, of many, is it's an outreach to younger men and women that get them interested in the building trades, where in the future with the baby boomers retiring, it's a great void, so there's a lot of good job opportunities. So with that, I'll go to our speakers that are here today. Thank you. And I'll make them, thanks.
Okay. Mr. McDonald, would you like to address the body? Name and address, please.
Mike McDonald, 6001 Grover Street, Suite number 2. I'm representing the Omaha Federation of Labor today as the president. Also, I am representing Legislative District 5, South Omaha. I appreciate the process you have to go through and the transparency you're showing with the budget process. Serving on the Appropriations Committee, it's not an easy task when you're looking at spending taxpayers' money and how does it best serve our community. The idea of what the Nebraska Center for Workforce Development and Education is trying to do is, as Councilperson Begley just mentioned, is trying to help those individuals that are in grade school, those junior high students, that are trying to decide what to do with their lives. And the idea of if your dream is to, of course, be a doctor or an architect, you go to college. But there's other ways to be successful without going to college and provide a great living for yourself and your family. And we're trying to introduce those people to that option with the skilled trades. And then you look at people that have made mistakes on the other end of the spectrum, that don't think they can ever change what they did. And they serve their time, and they've been incarcerated for a number of years, and some have given up, and some have no hope. And what we're telling those individuals is the past is in the past. If you want to go ahead and reset your life and look at the trades as an option, then we're going to look at the future for you and not the past. Now, why is it important to us? Why is it important to us as elected officials? Because we should help those individuals. We should want to help those individuals. But also, as a community, We need those individuals to look at the trades. If you think about what's going on right now, and this is pre-COVID numbers, but with the idea of the metropolitan statistical area, and as Councilman Bagley said, with the baby boomers and the growth within that MSA, we are going to double our need in the next 15 to 20 years for people in the trades, the skilled trades. Now, this was all being discussed, and those numbers were being brought to us prior to the next project at University of Nebraska Medical Center. $2.6 billion project, 2.5 million square feet, the largest construction project in the history of Nebraska. You could see 38,000 skilled tradespeople on that job site for 3 to 4 years. We need these people. Not only is it the right thing to do based on the idea of encouraging kids to make this decision with their life, but for those people that have made mistakes, give them a second chance. And that's what the Nebraska Center for Workforce Development and Education is trying to do. We have subject matter experts here today to discuss, and I'm here to try to answer any of your questions, but I'd please ask you to strongly consider supporting this resolution, because I think it's going to make that kind of difference in our community.
Thank you, and thanks for your public service as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Palermo, you're recognized.
I think, well, yeah, we'll let,
Call him up.
yeah. Sergeant Hanson, I've seen you motioning for the podium. Come on up. Tell me about the program.
Sergeant Aaron Hanson, 13445 Crier Avenue. I'm here representing the Nebraska Center for Workforce Development and Education. Currently, I'm acting as the executive director of that organization. But I'm also here representing the men and women of the Omaha Police Officers Association. Tony Connor, who's out of town at a national conference, wanted me to speak on behalf of this effort, which is something that our membership is extremely passionate about. I'm going to keep my comments brief because you do have Abby Kassow, our project director. She'll be able to give you all the specifics, but it's very difficult as a peace officer to come and go from the same homes time and again, see the same faces time and again, and then leave. And maybe refer those individuals to someone for some help. And sometimes they follow through and sometimes they don't. As a 25-year law enforcement professional, what we are seeing, the outcomes we are seeing with the Nebraska Center for Workforce Development and specifically Project Reset, it does my heart good. I am seeing young men and women who I never thought would be moving on such a successful, productive life track do just that. During our term, one of our mentees 3 years ago called me in a panic because he was being shot, as he was being shot. Today, he has his own home, a new car, and he's a skilled tradesman. This is important. I do want to say that I give the mayor so much credit for a well-thought-out budget, and this council also. There's so many good things in this budget when it comes to keeping us safe and also prioritizing mental health and infrastructure. I do believe that this is such a worthwhile investment for you to consider. And I will take any questions that you may have. Otherwise, I'd be happy to pass it over to Abby Kassow.
Thank you, Sergeant. Abby, come on up.
Hi, I'm Abby Kassow. I'm the program director for Project Reset, 6001 Grover Street. I took over running Project Reset in January. Prior to that, I was the gang unit probation officer for 15 years in the city of Omaha. So that's kind of my background and experience. In that position, I often saw the struggle that justice-involved individuals had when they were looking to find a career where they could support their families, have health care, have retirement, all those things that a lot of us take for granted. Project Reset is providing just that. We mentor individuals that have justice background into positions in the skilled labor and trade. We do that by providing them basic support structure, help get them stable, whether it's transportation, housing, all of those needs. When we're working with them with that, we create a partnership with a mentor in our program. That mentor provides 24-hour support for that individual while they're working to get transitional employment so they can have income coming in right away. During that time, we work on soft skills, right? Being on time, learning conflict management while you're on the job. Then we work at trade exploration to let them learn about the trades. What would they be good at? What would they be strong at? What are they interested in? They get to go on job site tours. They get to go to the different union halls, understand the difference between union and non-union jobs. We work with those individuals then to get transferred over into what we call trade-based employment, where they're out in the trades, working on the construction sites, and getting that firsthand experience. Our end goal with most of them is to get them into an apprenticeship program. We stay with them all the way 90 days into that apprenticeship program to make sure that it's a smooth and solid transition for them and that we know that position is going to last for them. Project Reset has had really good success. We're new, we know that. We've got a lot to prove, but the numbers we have coming out we think are impressive, and we think that we can continue that if we have the right support. With that, I do have somebody here that'd like to talk about kind of their experience.
Hi, name's Ed Black. I'm the field rep for the Bricklayers Union, 5808 South 118th Circle. I grew up in a poverty-stricken neighborhood, so I know what this offers to people and the support they give to these kids that allows them to get transportation to job sites. These trades will not only lessen the burden on society for financial reasons, for medical reasons, and these kids out there, they're doing great. They're doing what they need to do and they're learning. And without the help of this program, that wouldn't happen. And I had someone mentor me to get me where I am today. Without that, I wouldn't be here. I guarantee you that. I'd probably be in prison. So, you know, keep that into consideration. So just anybody have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Floor still yours? Okay, still mine. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mike Barrett.
Mr. Barrett, come on up. Let's hear.
So just to
story
be clear
from
to folks, though, this is a council member calling up people to offer comments they're seeking, and this is not a public hearing. So we're not going
Correct.
to take folks, they're just walking up that aren't recognized by a council member to address a particular item. Mr. Palermo, the floor is still yours.
Yeah, Mr. Barrett.
I'm with Plumbers Local 16, 4801 F Street. If half the people in this room had plumbing licenses, I'd have a job for each and every one of them. We have a call for almost 30 people out there. I go to job fairs, career fairs, and we cannot find enough people. I work with Abby, I work with Officer Hanson. I see the hope they give these kids, and I see the people that we need. This is a worthy cause, and this is something that I'll support, and my union supports, as long as it's around, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I have a point of order, possibly a legal question.
Mr. Storer, don't make me regret this. Come on down for a second. And then the city attorney could possibly help me out.
Well, I apologize for not understanding your rules, but I don't see.
Before you start with understanding, the president will tell you what the rules are for these
Would you
budget.
speak up, please? I don't have a problem usually in the morning. I can't understand you, please.
Yeah, it's late in the day, you know, food in everybody's bellies. That's probably what helps from, or hurts the hearing. But the president will tell you how these amendments, or I can tell you. So here's how it works. We have budget amendments on the agenda. And there is no public hearing. It was already closed. So as people come up with a budget amendment, if we have people that want to speak on that particular item, we would call them up to hear a story from them.
Okay.
Give us reassert, let us know why the council member should vote for that particular budget amendment.
Okay.
So do you want to speak
I'm just trying to help the process here.
I think we're doing good on the process. Do you want to say something about this particular budget amendment?
I want to refer to, I don't see this listed as a presentation or a proclamation. I think the time for all of this that we've had and we're hearing was last week when the citizens could have a hearing.
Correct, but you wouldn't
There's
have
a
known about
hearing
these.
for somebody here today, but not a citizen.
Okay.
I think it's
Starting
out
to
of
make me
order
regret it.
and possibly an unreasonable rule under the Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
I had a discussion this morning. That is not just for you people, it is also for the citizens. Call me out of order.
I'm not going to
Send
call
me
you
out of
order.
here. Go
I want to
ahead.
hear You
But it's
speak
all-
about jobs
you
that are
don't
needed in
say
the
it's a
city of
hearing.
Omaha. That's what I want to hear you speak about.
It is not a public hearing, so all of these
Okay, so
people,
nothing on item 10. Thank you, sir.
they get to say stuff that the citizens didn't get to say last week.
Now you're out
You
of
should
order.
not vote on any of these today. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bagel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say thanks to Senator McDonald and Sergeant Hansen, and especially Abby, because I know the work that you do on, it's so much more to it than just matching people up with jobs. It's teaching young men and women that may go back to the lifestyle of crime and to prison on the immediate, simple social skills of reporting to work on time, doing what you're supposed to do. And the unions provide a mentor for these young men and women to perform those tasks that Senator McDonald very eloquently spoke of with all the jobs that are coming. And these young men and women that are being helped by the center are going to be taxpayers, they're going to be productive citizens. And again, I want to thank everybody that belongs to the Center for Workforce Development and Education, because it's a vital need that this program is growing, and the great work that is done there, it will serve our taxpayers and our community well. Thanks, Mr. President.
Ms. Milton, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I was in support of this before I put my amendment on, and I will continue to support it because I actually think we can work together on this one. You're providing jobs, and even in that interim, if you have somebody coming in that's going to get that temporary job while they're working with you but are having trouble paying rent, please let them know that there are funds available. So again, this is where our different nonprofits can work together to try and keep some of the people coming to you. It may take a little while for them to get the training and get them to that job where they're going to be able to pay for their rent, and then eventually are here, buy their own home. So in the meantime, though, we do have some funding so that maybe we can get their rent paid while they're going through your program. So I think it's an excellent partnership to have, and that knowledge. So we can definitely kind of help each other out. But I think it's just a fabulous program, and I've been on kind of both sides. Like Sergeant Hansen said, I've been both the prosecutor who saw multiple people come in front of me, but I also, after leaving the prosecutor's office, did the alternate public defender contract for child support offenders. So I can tell you that there were a number of people that I was trying to help, and this is 10 years ago, and I wish I had your organization to refer them to, because they were being held in contempt for not paying their child support. Because they didn't pay their child support, they lost their driver's license. Because they didn't have a driver's license, they couldn't get to the job, and the spiral goes. And so I think this is an excellent opportunity for people that get in that unfortunate situation who want to try and get out of it and then feel like there's nowhere to go and no one can help. So I think it's wonderful, and hope that this continues to work out. It sounds like you've helped hundreds of people just during COVID. So I would love to see the program expand, and maybe we'll be able to provide even more funding next year. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Obviously, I co-sponsored this with Councilmember Bagley. Those who remember will remember that a couple years ago, we'd given $63,000, or at least voted on $63,000 for this exact program. And the reason being is because if you pay attention to these council meetings, a lot of it is development. And I've always asked for years now, that's great, we approve this, but who's going to do the job? Who is going to be the plumber, or electrician, or carpenter? I mean, who is the one that's going to actually come out and do this job? So it makes sense for us as a city, as we approve different contracts for development and jobs that we create, we got to find the employees to do it. And that's why this is so important. So sure, you could say, yeah, let's give a lot more, but this is the part of the buy-in. This is where the city provides a little bit, and then those philanthropic dollars, or those who have the extra money, can also put in. I know City HR has worked on a program similar to this to filter kids that just didn't know what they wanted to do, or get them into them jobs, and this is that other step. And I think one time along the way I heard, maybe it was Abby, or maybe it was somebody, but the comment was from a participant that said, We knew these jobs were here, we just didn't know they were here for us. So think about that. We knew the jobs were here, we didn't know they were here for us. So it's our job to get people to that place to fill these jobs so we can actually build the city of Omaha together. So I think there was a motion.
No motion yet.
I will make a motion to support item agenda number 10.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. No further lights. Roll call.
Thanks. Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0.
Without objection, we'll bring up supplemental agenda item number 73. I think we've identified that procedurally this item cannot pass if the previous items did pass, but I'll recognize Ms. Melton as this was her amendment.
Thank you. And I would like the opportunity because Aaron has done a lot of work and is here. Dr. Fettinger, I know I always mess up how to pronounce her last name, but if you could come down because I think this is important, and just because I can't get the funds today and I'm going to have to withdraw my request for funding, I'm just asking that you would give the council an update as I attempt to try and find other funds to help support this. And I know you've done a lot of work in preparing for today, so I am just asking for the council to allow her to present.
Thank you for that. I'm always prepared to talk about evictions, which means my life
Yes,
is
you
fairly
are.
depressing. Hi, Dr. Erin Feitstinger. I work at Together. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Policy, 812 South 24th Street. We're also a collaborative partner of the Tenant Assistance Project, and knowing that Councilmember Melton has volunteered with us, she asked me to come and just talk a little bit about the Tenant Assistance Project so you have that information. So I have several graphs. I was up too late last night, sorry. Okay, so Douglas County Tenant Assistance Project is a collaborative effort by several community organizations to ensure that each tenant with an eviction hearing has access to a volunteer lawyer. How it works, we always tell our clients if they call us at Together and are facing an eviction hearing, have that filing in hand. First thing to do is call legal aid. I'm gonna get that tattooed on me for how many times we say it. But those who can't do that in time, we all know legal aid is overburdened, can show up on the day of their eviction hearing, and there will be a volunteer lawyer who can review their case, talk to their landlord or their landlord's attorney, and see if one, this eviction is illegal, and that can be for various reasons, improper filing, improper notice. During the CARES Act moratorium, we found our most conservative estimate that 36 of our neighbors here in the city were evicted illegally under the CARES Act. So if they had had a lawyer, we would have been able to defend them and make sure that they had the protection that was available to them. It also benefits landlords and tenants because they can work out an agreement that avoids an eviction judgment on a tenant's record, which can be really, really difficult to overcome in your future housing search. And I sat in this room on Friday when the Urban Affairs Committee of the Nebraska Legislature heard the City of Omaha's affordable housing report, and making sure that people can stay in their homes is one really good way to make sure that we have affordable housing and that people aren't losing their homes. I will also say that this allows the landlord and their attorney and the tenant to work out an agreement, things like just having a little bit more time so that the tenant can get their stuff together, move on to their next place, return their keys, set a move-out date. Sometimes it's just a conversation to reach an understanding. A lot of times now that we have these ERAP funds that you were talking about, it's making sure that tenants and landlords know that this money is available and they can get paid, and we can avoid this ugly process altogether. Just to give a little background, and I handed these out, and I can also follow up with anyone who is interested in any more information. Is that working?
Mm-hmm. It'll come on. Just give it a sec.
It's too fancy. What happened to the old projector with
And then
the
just take
film?
the top, just the button at the top will reduce it.
Nope, wrong way. All right. So, 2020, I compiled the eviction filings. These aren't judgments. This is every eviction filed within city limits, which came to 3,075 eviction filings within the city limits in 2020. With all of the different moratoriums in effect, we still had over 3,000 evictions, and broke them down for you by your city council district. So Councilmember Johnson, North Omaha had 903 evictions. And I will also say that if you lived in 68111, you were 4 times more likely than the average Nebraska renter to receive an eviction judgment on your record if it went to trial. Councilmember Bagley, you are in second with 609. Councilmember Festerson, 468. Councilmember Melton, 421. Councilmember Palermo, 325. Councilmember Rowe, 233. And Councilmember Harding, who is not here, but I'll send him this, is 116. And those numbers pretty much hold true, except that Councilmember Melton, your district went up in 2021. And those numbers are for April to August to today of 2021. So the tenant assistance program is really necessary. In 2020, only 4.4% of tenants in Douglas County Eviction Court had representation, compared to over 90% of landlords. In Lancaster County, who started a similar eviction program, or a similar program in response to COVID-19, less than 5% of their tenants had a lawyer before TAP started there, and this meant that 80% of their cases resulted in an eviction judgment on that tenant's record. Now, 100% of tenants who show up to their hearing have an attorney, and fewer than 2% of those cases result in an immediate eviction. So I've been attending eviction court for a while now, and every day down in courtroom 20, which is just below us here, with the exception of Thursday, an eviction filing has almost always meant an eviction judgment. I got to witness TAP in their first week in action here, and there were 16 eviction hearings that day, and only 3 resulted in a judgment. And that was because those tenants did not appear for their hearing, so did not have access to a volunteer lawyer. This morning I was in eviction court. There were 13 hearings. 10 of those were dismissed because the landlord attorney and their volunteer lawyers or their legal aid lawyers had reached an agreement that avoided an eviction judgment. The moratorium, as you might know, on non-payment of rent, which tenants still have to proactively seek out that protection, is lifting on October 3rd, and we already know from past moratoriums that eviction filings will spike as a result of that moratorium lifting. Look, different graph. You do not have this, and sorry for the lo-fi home office highlighter job that I did here, but COVID. So this is a graph from a report that we did with Creighton University about COVID-19 and evictions in Nebraska in 2020. The first column here is the state moratorium. You'll see right after that lifted, filings went up. Second column here is the CARES Act moratorium. After that lifted, filings went up. And I will say that when we had that brief day where we thought that the moratorium, the CDC moratorium, was ending at the end of July, eviction filings did spike. They nearly doubled. People were already preparing to file more evictions. I will also say that the moratoriums and these protections have been working. This top line here is our average cases in Nebraska between 2016 and 2019, but with the result of the moratoriums, those eviction filing numbers have gone down, and there is no reason for us to anticipate that they will continue to stay down once the moratorium is lifted. So the fact that lawyers are in the courtroom and available to help tenants is absolutely necessary. I want to be really clear that an eviction judgment means homelessness. And homelessness means that a small army of social service organizations, some of which are funded through pass-through dollars from the city, are mobilized to help that family or that person get back on their feet. It is much more cost-effective for us to intervene before an eviction happens than for us to intervene after the fact. Just one example, a family of 7 was evicted last month, and 6 different agencies were mobilized afterwards to help that one family, and they are still living in a shelter. So it's much easier for us to just help people stay in their homes than it is for us to work on the back end. Not that we're not going to stop doing that. Of course, we're going to help whoever needs it. I will also say that when you're discussing ERAP dollars, in Lancaster County and in Douglas County, The Tenant Assistance Project includes representatives from various agencies, including Match. We live stream them in to the little volunteer lawyer kiosk, which helps tenants and landlords apply for emergency rental assistance right then and there. In Lancaster County, this collaborative effort has resulted in $2.1 million in their ERAP funds getting into landlords' hands. Across the country, programs like the Douglas County Tenant Assistance Project are proving to be a crucial component of ERAP distribution. We're doing a good job here in the city of getting rental assistance out, but we want to make sure that every tenant and every landlord who needs help is getting that help. And this program helps us do that. A few other things, and I don't know if these packets got distributed, but just to give you some little more information, a sample of 800 filings last year in Douglas County in 2020 showed that over 85% of those were for non-payment of rent. Again, just highlighting the critical importance of making sure that both tenants and landlords have access to ERAP in every way that we can. North and South Omaha accounted for about 30% of the statewide eviction filings. So of all the filings in the state of Nebraska, North and South Omaha accounted for just about 30%. So I have lots of information. Like I said, this is what I do. So if anybody has any questions whatsoever, I am more than happy to answer them. And I would invite any of you to come down with us in courtroom 20 any day of the week except for Thursday to see how it's all going.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you making that presentation on this amendment. It's unfortunate today that I have to withdraw it because otherwise it would cause our budget to be out of budget, and it has to balance. And so I look forward to working with you some more. Like we'll start tomorrow morning when I see you at 9 o'clock in front of courtroom 20 tomorrow morning on how we can maybe apply for additional funds, where we can get the funds, because we really need to make sure that this happens. And it is happening and we are working on it. But if you have a program that you don't have one specific leader that's there kind of full time, then sometimes your efforts you don't get the results that you necessarily need. So that's what we're looking for. And I think you've recognized that need as well. So we'll continue to plug on and we'll continue to try and find those funds.
Well, thank you for volunteering. And I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on public access television on Tuesdays. But again, just encourage any of your constituents to please let them know about this program. If they contact you about an eviction that they have, please tell them to show up to their eviction hearing. That's the way we're going to get to them and help them out. And I appreciate your continued consideration, and reach out anytime if you have questions.
Thank you. Well, and it's also important to know that landlords, one of the landlords that I interacted with as I was representing one of the tenants, the landlord was unaware. So we hooked her up with how you can apply on behalf of your tenants. You have to work with your tenants. It has to be with tenant approval. But she was going to go and try and apply for funds for 4 or 5 others without coming back to court.
Mm-hmm.
And so we also want to make sure, I got a few calls of people saying, hey, you're all about helping tenants, but the landlords have been suffering for 1.5 years and haven't been getting paid. And I said, you know what? I'm all about helping them both. This is definitely a win-win, and that's what we want to see. And those are the programs I like to see.
Yeah.
So thank you, Doctor. I appreciate you coming down. Thank you for spending all the time. And I do know you were working hard on this into the night to make this presentation. So it's unfortunate that we didn't get it passed today, but we'll keep on plugging along.
I've got a toddler. I was up anyway.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So there was a motion to withdraw, which I will second for that reason. I think we do need to vote on that to dispense with it. But before we do, I would thank you both for that information too. Obviously a huge need and very important program we're talking about here for those that are in dire need right now. And a reminder that this budget amendment was talking about 2022. That needs immediate, as we were just discussing, and so I would.
It's both now and into 22.
But this amendment was for 22, because it's the 22 budget. But I would be supportive and would offer my assistance, I guess I would say, to do whatever needs to be done to access some of that current $22 million in funding, of which I think several million is still available, and the 19 million is still on the way. If that requires a amendment to that agreement, I'd welcome that and would second that with you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second to withdraw. Roll call.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 11, a resolution to approve a revision to the recommended capital improvement program to include the North Saddle Creek Business District improvements for years 2022 to 2023 in the amount of $300,000.
Thank you. So we now start 3 items that are capital improvement plan amendments. I did submit this one, so I'll give a brief summary of what it does. This would pursue the city's interest in updating and making sure our historic neighborhood business districts are successful well into the future. The same way we accomplished the improvements to Dundee and Benson and Florence, for example, which is we were able to secure a small amount of city money through transportation bonds and then raise a substantial amount of money privately, philanthropically, to get those projects done together with those business districts and with those neighborhoods. That's what we're attempting to do here on the North Saddle Creek Business District. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but it's essentially the 3-block area from Northwest Radio up to what's called the Peanut now, so about 50th Street, where some very popular local businesses currently reside. The Homey, Sergeant Pepper's, Saddle Creek Breakfast Club, for example. And we do have a new development interest involved in taking that to the next level. And if you've driven through there recently, you recognize it's definitely in need of some public infrastructure improvements for those businesses and for that surrounding neighborhood. I've already raised $15,000 to do a master plan for that area. That's also what we did in those other business districts I mentioned, and would work that through the planning department. I've talked to planning department staff about doing that. The description of where these funds come from is what's called the Urban Design Retrofit Project. And what that does is reserve a certain amount of funds, $340,000 in 2022, and a little bit more than that in 2023. And I'll read you the description of what that does. To correct substandard conditions of public rights-of-way in Omaha's urban design districts related to sidewalks, street trees, street lighting, and other elements identified in the Urban Design Zoning Code, Omaha Streetscape Handbook, and Master Plan, projects may be done in conjunction with redevelopment activity and leverage other local funds as available, such as BID contributions or TIF, or standalone streetscape projects. So in my view, that's very consistent with what we're trying to do here. It just attributes it to a specific project, one that's ready to roll and one that I know can get accomplished. And that neighborhood does intend to pursue a business improvement district to take care of those improvements once they would be done in 2023. I wanted to call up just 2 folks briefly that I'm working with on this project. 2 of them represent the business districts, the business interests in the district, and one, I believe, is here from the neighborhood. Sil Orsi and Josh Hannum, would you want to just introduce yourselves real quick and talk about this vision for the area you're pursuing?
Hi, I'm Josh Hannum, 1410 North Saddle Creek.
Sil Orsi, 1820 North 53rd Street. So thanks, Mr. President, for your support and leadership on this initiative. This began about 2 years ago where we, Josh and I met and started putting together a plan to really try to transform the area. What we eventually came together on was a mixed-use walking district that would really unlock some of the assets we think that really are assets in that neighborhood. Right now, the zoning, the shape of some of the lots are really difficult to work with the zoning, as on-site parking, for example, which makes the use of the site very difficult. And we've seen a lot of buildings go into a really distressed condition because of it. So we worked together. We've assembled enough ground, enough property, including the former Wolfson site, which was a used car site, to be able to be catalytic, to actually make this project achievable. What this appropriation will do will be assist us in taking that plan or that catalytic investment, match it with the master plan that the neighborhood's working on, and actually start building out soon some of the streetscape improvements that will support sort of getting momentum in that area. So we've also visited with many of the property owners within the district, and we've seen no obstacles so far. That's Homey Inn and Sergeant Pepper's as examples. So I think everybody seems to be supportive of what's going on in the area, which is positive. And with that, Josh, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, being a local business owner in the area, I've been there for going on 10 years now. That you know, it's a strong, vibrant community around us, but the actual area itself needs some help, needs some work. If you guys have driven down there lately, so just being one of the business operators there, we fully support it.
One last thing is we're trying to do this in full collaboration, so we're working very closely with the city planning department and the neighborhood to let this be an area that really is driven by the neighborhood and by the priorities of the planning department.
Thank you. There's Megan here. I don't know if I saw. Oh, there she is. Yeah, come on down.
Hi, I'm Megan Brink. I'm with the Metcalf Harrison Neighborhood Association, 1709 North 50th Street. Josh has engaged with me for several years kind of about wanting to improve that area, and President Festerson here has done a lot to work with us. I know several years ago we had a meeting at the Homie Inn and discussed wanting to do the BID, but because we had a lot of differing business opinions, it was kind of hard to get everybody on the same page, and I feel like we're finally at a place where we can kind of move forward with it and make a lot of progress. We did have a board meeting yesterday for our neighborhood association, and everyone is in full support of us moving forward and helping with however we can in forwarding this to make that business district successful. And I think all the neighbors would be very excited to see the progress we could make with that. So we are in full support of any improvements in that district.
Thank you. And thanks for your work as a president of the Neighborhood Association, often an unsung job as well. Okay, thank you. So I appreciate that testimony. I think this is consistent with the master plan. It's consistent with the Chamber of Commerce's recent Connect Go strategy, which basically says do 10 more of these across the city. I think that's exactly what we need to maintain our workforce, make our business districts and our neighborhoods successful long term. With that, I don't see any other lights. I would take a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
I'm sorry, I just had one question in regards to the funding for this out of transportation bonds. Is that the appropriate place for the funding for this to come from, Mr. Curtis?
Steve Curtis, City Finance. It's my understanding that the money is supposed to be for capital improvements. I might defer to planning for, they're the ones who actually do the CIP.
And Mr. Fansel, I want to say that I'm supportive of this and I support BIDs. I just want to make sure that we've got the right place for the funding.
Dave Fansel, Planning Director. If your question is it the right fund? Yes, that's the urban design retrofit is financed from the transportation bonds in the CIP.
Okay, so that's appropriate.
It's appropriate funding, yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Roll call.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 12, a resolution to approve a revision to the recommended capital improvement program to include the bicycle and pedestrian master plan implementation program for the years 2023 to 2027 in the amount of $1,250,000.
Thank you. I'll give a brief introduction on this one too. This item is consistent, I think, with our major multimodal strategy released by the Chamber of Commerce just recently, Connect Go. This would implement essentially what is called a bike and pedestrian master plan, which is also on our agenda today to be approved, and that could be completed in 2022. So when those findings are complete, this will be prepared to start implementing them with a modest amount of city money each year, 2023 through 2027. As Bike Nebraska has said in their letter of support for this, they're fully supportive, of course, of that process, but also recognizing that we need to have some short-term and some long-term wins in this area and start funding them immediately, which will also attract, I think, further fundraising and further private resources to do so, starting in 2023. This does leave additional funding into what is currently major intersection improvements, that category of CIP funding, over $1 million per year. So I don't think it impacts any particular project in that area, which is also important. But I just think it's important we start demonstrating our commitment to pedestrian and bike infrastructure throughout the city and put our money where our mouth is. And that starts with something like this, a new category in the capital improvement plan. It's consistent with the master plan. And with that, I'll recognize the other lights or a motion in a second. Ms. Melton.
Sorry, I feel like I've been talking a lot today, but on this one, I do have another question. And Mr. Curtis, it may be a combination between you and Mr. Stubbe. But here we're using capital improvement funds, major intersection improvements, and it's my understanding that we have about $30 million in intersection needs. We only have $9 million in the CIP. And I know that we have a stack of intersections that are in need of improvement. But I also wonder, can this be, what they want to do here, can CIP funds be used? Because I believe our charter says that bonds can't be used for anything that doesn't have a greater than 15-year life. Would this be considered to have more than 15-year life for purposes of using these bonds? And it might be a Mr. Kuzy question. Whoever can answer that question.
So I'll start out, Bob Stubbe, Public Works. So in my opinion, we're looking at funding something from a plan that hasn't been fully developed yet. So once that plan is completed, if there are identified capital improvements within that plan, then the potential is that funding could be provided. You are correct. I've been here long enough to have this drilled in my head multiple times, is that transportation bonds, any type of bonds, have to be used for capital improvement type projects that have a useful life over 15 years. And so once again, not knowing what specifically is going to come from this plan, we're looking at using dollars that we don't know whether it's actually going to be something that would fall under being considered as a capital improvement.
And I also have another question when it comes to, I mean, I'm not against implementing the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. I think that's great. My concern are these the right funds that we should be reducing? Because we have a lot of major intersections in our city, and infrastructure, I think, is the #1 concern for taxpayers, and that's where they do want their money to improve our roads. And we rely on the federal government to come in, and it's typical that it's about an 80-20 share, so we use these funds for our 20% share. So if we don't have our 20% share, we're not going to get the 80% from the federal government. And then as of late, because of the increase in costs, I think our share has been increasing for a lot of those projects as well. So do you have any concerns about losing this amount of money, Mr. Stubbe, for purposes of what impact that's going to have on the $30 million in infrastructure projects that we need?
Bob Stubbe, Public Works. So again, there's always more needs than there's funding available. And I'll give an example of what we talked about this morning. We're currently going through an effort right now to look at a intersection at 205th and Cumberland Drive that we haven't identified what the final options are, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood about $1.3 to $2.8 million. That's in addition to, I think, the 9 other locations that I provided to you that we've identified multiple other locations where improvements need to be made, not only from a safety perspective, but also from an operational perspective, and they range somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 7 times the benefit to cost ratio. So obviously there are recognized benefits that will come from that. We do have a concern with regard to the fact that the available federal funds is not necessarily there. If you remember a few years back, we completed the 132nd and West Center project. That was 90% federal funds, 10%. Those types of highway safety improvement program funds are not necessarily available. So the potential is that these 10 projects that I mentioned to you, there wouldn't be any other funding source for us, and we would have to utilize all transportation bonds for those types of projects. So if the funding's not there, those projects just get extended out beyond 6 to 10 years.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Stubbe. I appreciate that, because that's, when I'm looking at this, sometimes what we want and what we're able to do are 2 different things. I really did want my amendment to go forward, but I withdrew it because our charter says we can't unbalance the budget. In this particular case, we're not sure what this is going to be used for, but if it's not for something that's greater than 15 years, then we can't use the transportation bonds for it. So I'm just concerned that we may be reserving money, taking money away from projects that are absolutely needed, that will come with more than 15 years at a cost of a plan that actually we haven't necessarily fully adopted. So those are my concerns. What I'm saying is I think it might just be premature to be doing this. And we want to make sure that we're not violating our charter. So, thank you.
I don't see any lights. I'll just mention that I understand that perspective, and it's a perspective also perhaps on the following one. But I also think by reserving these funds in 2023, we're planning for that possibility. Should the master plan not identify anything to do in 2023, we wouldn't have to do anything. Or should it not identify anything that's compatible with the 15-year requirement, which I agree with, I'm sure there's probably other funds that could be available. And I am flexible on what source of funds this could be. It's just that this was not otherwise provided in the CIP. So when it's not otherwise provided in the CIP, you have to look other places to make these kind of amendments. And using transportation bonds is allowable in this case and does not violate the charter. With that, is there a motion or a second?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion a second. Roll call.
Melton.
No.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
No.
Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-2. Item 13, a resolution to approve a revision to the recommended capital improvement program to include the Harney Street Protected Bikeway for year 2023 in the amount of $500,000.
So I think we're all pleased to finally see the Market to Midway bike lane, protected bike lane, established in our city after a long, long wait. It's a pilot project that's funded entirely privately. There is no city money currently involved. With an analysis that will then occur in 2022 as to how it went, what those numbers are, and what the exact recommendations might be to make it permanent and/or alter its current construction. I'm confident it's going to find that it should be permanent, but should that study for some reason find that it's not or should be placed somewhere else, this has that flexibility. Again, it just allows us to plan forward in 2023 and to have some funding available to pursue that at the time rather than not being able to pursue that in 2023 should that study prove what we think it's going to show. And again, I just think it's important we start putting our money where our mouth is when we start talking about multimodal strategies, governmental entities stepping up to fund them, the future of our city, the ability to keep young people, the ability to attract a workforce we need. All these things are important in that respect, and I think we need to start showing our commitment to that. This produces what's called the retaining wall program, but leaves $750,000 in there for those purposes. So there's still flexibility there in 2023, and also shows matching money from the private sector, which I think would be possible if there's city money also involved going forward in 2023. It is consistent with the master plan. Transportation bonds can be used in this case. Again, with the parameters we just discussed on the previous item, that it be a 15-year investment and only on certain improvements that might otherwise get funded by private money if needed. So with that, I'll end my remarks and recognize Ms. Melton.
Thank you. And again, I love private money. I love private-public partnerships. I think on this one, though, and Mr. Stubbe, the bike lanes, and I've seen them go up. They've been up, I think the pilot started about 3 weeks ago, so it may be just a little early to tell whether those are working, whether we need to do something else. Maybe we need to look at different bikeways. So about 3 weeks ago, we started the pilot program. But from what I see, even what we did does not look like it would last more than 15 years. Because it looks like it's painting, and then I don't know the proper terminology for the barriers. So maybe you can fill me in, but they don't look like they would be something that would last 15 years. In fact, I'm hoping they last through the winter because I don't know how the snowplows are going to take care of that. But is that something that we could use transportation bonds for?
So again, Bob Stubbe, Public Works. Again, striping is something, or paint on the pavement is something that we do twice a year within the city of Omaha, and that is not considered as being a capital improvement. It would be an operating expense. The pylons or bollards that are there today are glued down, so they're not necessarily permanent. The potential is that They could be knocked over during the winter season, depending on what kind of snow event that we have. So those things, to me, again, would probably not qualify as being a capital type of improvement that would fall under using transportation bonds.
And so, and again, this has nothing to do whether you support them or not support them. I just want to make sure that when the council does things, we're actually passing them and they actually could be covered. And in this case, although there would be things in the master plan that may be that we could use CIP funds for, because they could have a life longer than 15 years. I can't imagine the bike lanes having a life longer than 15 years. That doesn't mean we wouldn't have them longer than 15, but under the definition of lifespan for infrastructure projects, that wouldn't be considered one. And my only other problem is this is coming out of the retaining wall funds. And I think I looked it up. We currently have about $13 million in retaining wall repairs that are needed now, with, I don't know, approximately 500 repairs that are needed. So, Mr. Stubbe, this is going to take approximately, I'm looking at 35-40% of the budget. How will you fund repairing the retaining walls?
Yeah, you're correct. We've got about 500 retaining walls. In fact, I think it was a few weeks back that you approved a contract for about $150,000 to repair a wall. So, and I think during the flood here recently that there was another wall that was compromised that potentially, if it's determined that it's ours, it's going to have to be repaired. The assessment was made of those 500. There's probably 400 that are in some level of repair. I'll use, for example, the retaining wall that's along Dodge Street in the west of 50th Street there. That was a brick wall that was put up a number of years back. It's in need of repair. That's an example of one. There's others that are significantly greater than that potentially could amount into the millions of dollars to repair. So taking funds away, as I stated previously, there's more needs out there than there's funds available. So taking funds away does have an impact on the program.
And Mr. Stubbe, would you be able to, once this, obviously we've only had these bike lanes for 3 weeks. At the end of the pilot program, could you review how it worked and then work on ways to implement and fund them if it's decided that we move forward without using transportation bonds?
Yeah, again, if the pilot and the data that's collected, if there's a determination that this bikeway exists, again, we would put it as part of our program to stripe it on a regular basis. Obviously, if the glued down bollards or pylons aren't acceptable, maybe there's other treatments that can be provided that are a little bit more permanent.
And again, if we continue that project too, you will be in charge of then funding the maintenance, and you will have to purchase special equipment in order to do that as well, correct?
Correct, because obviously the group that's been put together that is kind of following through with providing snow removal and all of that, there's special equipment that have to be provided. It does restrict the lane, so it will have an impact on our ability just to do normal snow removal. So those are the types of things that would have to be evaluated. If it's determined that we're going to have to buy special equipment, that would actually come out of my operating budget.
Okay, not the transportation bond. So again, I think that this is one where, since the project's only 3 weeks old, it may be a little premature to be taking money away from repairs that are needed today, infrastructure repairs that are needed immediately. I'm just a little uncomfortable doing that. I would rather wait to see how the pilot works, get the plan back, have everybody review it, and then review it with Public Works to determine where that funding should come from, as opposed to the council, because I think some of it may be operating and there may be other funding if we determine that it works, and then it may change based upon how the pilot works. So again, it's only about 3 weeks old, so I think I'd rather see the pilot, see the results before I'm reserving any infrastructure funds to projects that we know absolutely have to be done. So that would be my reason for the no. And I don't think, pursuant to our charter, that we can use these funds for these lanes. I think we need to find other funding in order to do them.
Thank you. Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Visterson. I just wanted to preface my remarks by saying that I am a proponent of the bikeway. I know that about a third of our citizens don't drive a car. They use other types of other types of transportation, but I do think it is premature. November 13 is premature in that, we put out there that we're going to do an 18-month pilot, and then after 3 weeks, we're ready to vote on funding it, or at least being prepared to fund it. I think we should give it some time to show that it really is working, it's working the way that we intended, and then make a motion then to fund it next year. And I think we have plenty of time to fund it in the next go around.
Thank you. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Councilmember Rowe, you're exactly right. It does seem like a big task to bring on just after a protected bikeway has been finally put up. But the truth be told is it should have been done a long time ago, and it hasn't. And we have a lot of bike lanes in this city. They don't get talked about a lot. I know on the road diet on 24th Street from L to Leavenworth, I got beat up daily from the business owners about the bike lanes going in, but they eventually went in, and we sometimes forget about areas like that, which I'm very proud to have in my district. But when it comes to this agenda item, I did hear Director Stubbe talk about special equipment to take care of this protected bike lane. So I wanted to ask you a couple questions because I want to make sure I'm on the Public Works Committee. And when you talk about special equipment within Public Works, Director Stubbe, do we have pickups with plows on them to take care of this city road?
Bob Stubbe, Public Works, we do have pickups with plows on them.
Okay, do we, as a city, within the Public Works Department, have a couple striping machines?
We do have striping machines.
Okay, because I wasn't clear on the special equipment. So, and I do have another question too. When we talk about how long this is going to last, and sure, maybe the barricades, maybe the glued down devices, maybe the striping won't last for 15 years, but I also, and sorry to put you on the spot, Director Stubbe, but this is important. What's the average lifespan of the concrete underneath that protected bike lane?
In this particular case, that's an asphalt surface. I believe it's a milled surface, and so normally on a road that would consider an arterial, it's probably got less than 15 years of life before it has to be resurfaced. If we put down a brand new concrete street, we would look to 30 to 50 years as being a surface from the standpoint of having to replace it. So again, this particular location, other than the intersection coming off the interstate, I think everything east of there is probably majority of it's asphalt that would have to be resurfaced.
Thank you, Director. So when we talk about if it's going to last 15 years, the road that it's on won't last 15 years. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. No further lights. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. Roll call.
Melton. No. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
No.
Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-2. Item 14, a resolution to raise revenue estimates and revise the expenditures of the 2022 budget as listed on the agenda due to the areas annexed into the city effective July 28th, 2021.
This item just recognizes the annexation package that was approved and adopts those funds into the budget. Any comments, or is there a motion? Second. Roll call.
Melton. Yes. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 15, a resolution to approve an increase of an additional 1% to the budgeted restricted funds for the fiscal year 2022.
This item, I'd like to have Mr. Kuzi just address briefly, only because it would require all 6 members to vote for it. I want to make sure it's understood what exactly this does.
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department. There is a statute that requires a 75% or 3/4 majority of the elected body to approve this type of action. I see that there are only 6 council members and not 7 in front of me this afternoon. I will say that there is an Attorney General's opinion from 2017 that was sent to the state auditor, who had a question for the state treasurer about whether it is the elected body itself or the quorum that is present to vote. Now, while the Attorney General's office opined that it only has to be the members present that constitute a quorum to vote. The statute itself does not say that. I'm not disagreeing with the opinion of the Attorney General. It's just the opinion of the Attorney General is not binding on anyone, including this body. So in the abundance of caution, my advice is that going to be that this vote to comply with the statute still requires 75%. And my calculator math that was done before shows that 75% of 6 is like 5.2. Since it is over 5, it will need to be a vote of all 6 council members, or in this case this afternoon, unanimous.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Kuzi or a motion? Second. Roll call.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 16, a resolution to approve the 2022 budget of the City of Omaha as submitted by the Mayor and Finance Department with the revisions adopted by City Council at this meeting.
Item number 16 would adopt the budget as amended today. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
As adopted.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 17, a resolution to approve the 2022-2027 Capital Improvement Program. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Number 17 would adopt the CIP as amended today. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. Roll call.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Items 18 through 20 can be considered together for Blue Sage Creek 2, located northeast of 213th and F Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 18, an ordinance to rezone this property from PG District to R4 District. Item 19, a resolution to approve the final plat. Item 20, a resolution to approve the subdivision agreement.
Public hearing and vote on items 18, 19, and 20 are today. The applicant, please. Mr. Jobin.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is a 65-lot subdivision, 64 residential lots, and 1 lot is actually a park. This is the second phase of Blue Sage Creek out at about 212th and F Street, so we're here to answer any questions that you might have. We also have Caleb Schneider of Lamper Nearson, the consulting engineers here, if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any proponents on 18, 19, and 20? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion by who?
I make a motion to approve.
Amy motioned it.
Okay, motion, how about motion by Melton, second by Bagley? Does that work for everybody? All right.
Third, ladies first.
Roll call.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Items 21 through 23 can be considered together for Irvington Industrial Replat 3, located at 4845 North 90th Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 21, an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the MCC overlay district to incorporate this property into that district. Item 22, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat. Item 23 is a resolution to approve the final plat.
Public hearing and vote on numbers 21, 22, and 23 is today. The applicant, please. Any proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Would like, I really wish that the developer who is here, I like to see what's going on. I get a lot of comments. I'm sure you do too, Councilman Festerson. That's kind of where some of us, we meet up. I would just like to have more information that I can share with people. So I wish they hadn't blown us off today.
I agree with that. And I've read the project and I think I'd be supportive, but I think
agree.
it's not unreasonable to ask the developers be here to talk about it. If you'd rather delay it for a period of time, that's okay with me.
I would like to. You know, I prefer to actually find some of this information out without having to listen to Grow Omaha at 9 a.m. on Saturday mornings to sometimes figure out what's going on in some of our development. So if anything, I would like to give them the ability to come down and be proud of what they're doing and how they're helping our city move forward. So, and I think this might be in your district, but I'd like to move to lay it over.
And continue public hearing?
Continue public hearing, yes.
I'll second that. Do you have a particular date in mind?
So let's see, we should just do 1 week. I would think the 24th would be fine.
Yep, second. Roll call.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 24, to consider a Class CK liquor license for Kincaidor Brewing Company located at 2279 South 67th Street.
Public hearing and vote on number 24 is today. We have the applicant by Zoom, Mr. Schmick. We'll get you off mute here in a second. Okay, your name and address, please.
Hey guys, my name is Cody Schmick. My address is 3460 Anaheim Drive in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Thank you. Here to answer questions, right?
Yeah, so we are a small craft brewery based in Broken Bow, Nebraska. We have a location in Grand Island, another location in Lincoln, and we've been working on Omaha for a little while, and finally think we found our home in Exarban Village. Super excited to take over there and hopefully add to the vibrant community that's already there. So,
great. Thank you. Are there any proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Seeing none, public hearings closed. Mr. Bagley, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. I just wanted to say, Cody, that I'm really glad you guys are coming to Omaha. With the other towns you've been in, I got a lot of friends that have enjoyed your product and have introduced me to it, and I enjoy it as well. So I know Exarban Village, I think you guys will fit in perfectly down there in that atmosphere, and I'm glad to have you come into our district, so I'll look forward to meeting you in person one day, maybe on your patio there. So welcome to District 3 and to Omaha. Thank you.
Is that a motion?
And I make a motion to support this ordinance. Thank you. I had the Kincaidor on my mind there, so thanks.
Better prove it quick. He's getting thirsty. Motion and a second. Roll call.
Melton. Yes. Palermo. Yes. Rowe. Yes. Bagley. Aye. Johnson. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 25, to consider a Class C liquor license for Dripped and Draped located at 6015 Maple Street.
Public hearing and vote today is on number 25. We have, I think, probably two applicants by Zoom, Vanell and Vandra Caldwell. We'll get you off mute here in a second. I think Vanell, right?
Vanille and Vandra.
Great. And can you just repeat your name and address for the record?
Vandra Caldwell, and my address is 3407 Boyd Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68111.
Great. Thank you. Are there any proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. I would just say, I've been in your shop. I think it's great. We talked on the phone about your new business plan and your thought to add your liquor license here, which I think will fit well in the Benson Business District, and we welcome you there and welcome this expansion.
Yay, thank you so much.
And if you want 30 seconds to give a commercial about what you're going to do, I'll offer that to you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So right now we are an all pink coffee shop, super girly, and we are all about women empowerment. We have a bunch of really cool wellness lattes on the menu. Right now we are wanting to expand to do some really cool specialty cocktails. So please stay tuned, follow us on social media. We have some really fun things coming up. Thanks to you guys.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion? It's my district.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion and a second. Roll call.
Melton. Yes. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Yes. Bagley. Aye. Johnson. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 26, to consider a liquor license reconstruction application for Casey's General Store, number 3814, located at 14330 Hillsdale Avenue.
Public hearing and vote on number 26 is today. The applicant, please.
Hello, I'm Janet Ferguson, District Supervisor for Casey's here in the Omaha metro area. I live at 7304 South 182nd Street, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. proponents, please? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the city council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the city council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the city council rules of order.
The public hearing on agenda items number 27 through 29 were held on August 10th. Second, roll call.
Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0.
The public hearings on agenda items number 30 through 41 are today. If you wish to address the city council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent. And for council members, I would just acknowledge we have applicants available by Zoom for number 30 and also number 31.
Sarah Johnson, 2316 North 52nd Street. Just here as a proponent for 37 and 38, the bike ped master plan. And I would like to just thank you all for approving the CIP, because as we know, plans are no good without implementation. But just wanted to show my support and thank you all very much.
Thank you. Anyone else on items 30 through 41? See none, public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 42, an ordinance to approve sanitary sewage system revenue bond series 2021 in the amount not to exceed $31 million. A is amendment of the whole requested by the Finance Department.
Is there a motion on number 42?
Second.
Is that the amendment of the whole? Same second?
Second.
Roll call.
Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 43, an ordinance levying a special tax and assessment on all lots and pieces of real estate within Street Improvement District 6886.
Public hearing on number 43 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Motion to approve.
Just public hearing today on that one. Yeah.
Item 44, an
Next
ordinance. Item 44, an ordinance levying a special tax and assessment on all lots and pieces of real estate within Street Improvement District 6887.
Public hearing on number 44 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 45, an ordinance levying a special tax and assessment on certain lots, parts of lots, and pieces of real estate to cover the cost of clearing snow and ice from sidewalks in the district number SWSR 2021-01.
Public hearing on number 45 is today. Any proponents?
Sean Gibson, Public Works Construction, here for any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 46, an ordinance approving a lease agreement with Union Pacific Railroad Company for a private road crossing near 41st and D Streets.
Public hearing on number 46 is today. Any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 47, an ordinance approving the Outlook Properties Industrial Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Agreement.
Public hearing on number 47 is today. Proponents, please. Any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 48, an ordinance to approve a lease with Project Harmony for the use of office space at 11949 Q Street.
Public hearing on number 48 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 49, an ordinance to establish a Class B flammable liquids storage district, B-208, located at 2410 Center Street.
Public hearing on number 49 is today. Any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Item 50, an ordinance to establish a Class B flammable liquids storage district, B-181, located at 7302 Pacific Street.
Public hearing on number 50 is today. Any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Item 74, request from Councilmember Bagley to reconsider ordinance 42605.
Shifting my paperwork here. Okay, so the request today from Councilmember Bagley to reconsider the item requires a motion and a second and a vote of the majority, correct? Councilman Bagley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. In discussions with the neighbors from the vote we had on this prior to this meeting, I would like to make a motion to reconsider that from last week.
I'll second that motion. And as council members know, we've had discussions with the applicant on this project since then, as well as the neighbors that had concerns about it. And to the applicant's credit, he has supplied us a letter that indicates his wish to withdraw his R5 zoning request, and so is supportive of the reconsideration motion today. And although we'll maintain the property, intends to engage his neighbors in an ongoing fashion, and we'll address that at a future date that does not include the R5 zoning. Motion and a second. Roll call.
Melton. Yes. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Item 75 is an ordinance to rezone property located at 4615 Davenport Street from R435 District to R5 District. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. B's communications in opposition.
Mr. Bagley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I wanted to mention Mr. Edvers, I believe I pronounced his name correctly. I appreciated the letter that he sent to the council, and it was heartfelt, and we kind of looked for that last week in talking to my colleagues. And after I read that, I felt really positive about him wanting to reach out to his neighbors, many of which I spoke to on this rezoning. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to deny.
Second. Mr. Rowe, you're recognized.
Yeah, I understand the reason for the reconsideration. I just wanted to go on record that that property is in a TOD. It's in a walking distance to the orbit, and we should probably expect to have more proposals like this come to us that are going to be, we're going to face opposition from neighbors. But, you know, we want more density, we want walkability, we want to be able to use orbit. And so this was a perfect example of where that could have been the case. Unfortunately, he didn't bring a case for us to really review and understand how he was going to make it work. But I just want to make sure that we understand that we approved going forward with missing middle housing. This would have been a perfect example of that, and but we missed it. So hopefully, maybe he'll come back with a better proposal in the future.
Yeah, I think those are comments that are right on, and I agree with. But at the same time, we do expect some level of detail to come with such proposals, especially when we receive concern. I think that's what happened here. No further lights. Roll call.
Melton. Yes. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Yes. Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Non-action items, items 51 through 71, do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on an agenda for consideration.
Second. Roll call.
Melton. Yes. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Meeting is adjourned at 4:08.